You spent years trying to become the best version of yourself, not for praise, not for applause, but because you believed that one day your parents would look at you and say, "We're proud of you." Then graduation day arrived. You walked into the hall with hope in your chest, surrounded by laughter, camera flashes, and happy families hugging each other. You searched the crowd, hoping to find the faces you loved most. But as each minute passed, the silence grew louder. Your name was called. You smiled for the photo, because that's what you're supposed to do. Yet the seats where your family should have been remained empty. No faces, no messages, no words. You told yourself maybe they were busy. Maybe they forgot. But deep down, you knew this moment would never come again. The kind of silence that day carried, it stayed. And when the phone finally rang, it wasn't to ask how you were, it was to ask for money. That's when the story began to break. If you've ever felt unseen by the people who should have seen you first, stay a little longer, this story might be yours too. And if it speaks to your heart, a quiet like or subscribe helps us keep telling stories that find those who need them most. You once believed a parent's love was the one thing you never had to earn. But as you grew up, you realized some kinds of love always came with conditions, invisible, unspoken, yet heavy enough to bend a child's heart. Your childhood looked peaceful from the outside. Family dinners, TV humming in the background, framed photos smiling from the wall. But if you looked closer, you could see the small difference in how every glance landed. When your brother broke a glass, everyone laughed, boys will be boys. When you dropped a book, your mother sighed, you're a girl. You should be more careful. Those words weren't sharp, but they stayed. From early on you learned how to be just enough. Not too loud. Not too emotional. Never tired. You tried to do everything right, hoping for a single look of pride, one soft well done. But every A grade, every certificate, every teacher's praise met the same response. That's your duty, not something to brag about. Eventually you stopped sharing your wins. You smiled politely when people complimented you and quietly folded your joy away. You still remember that day in class when the teacher asked, "What are you most proud of about your family?" Close quote. The room filled with excited voices. You just stared at your desk. Images flashed: your parents arguing over money, your mother scolding you for helping the wrong way. Close quote. Evenings when you wanted to talk, but no one listened. So you whispered, "I'm proud that I keep trying." The teacher smiled kindly, but you knew your answer didn't sound like anyone else's. When adulthood came, you thought things might change. You became stronger, independent, working late shifts to pay tuition. You sent money home every month, even though they didn't really need it, a small gesture to show you cared. But the words stayed the same. Look at your brother. He always thinks about family. You only think about yourself. You laughed quietly, realizing that sometimes caring for yourself is treated like a sin. Now and then, the question returned. If I weren't me, would they love me more? Close quote. It haunted every exam, every milestone. Still, you kept pushing forward, believing that one day they would finally see you. Then came your senior year, the year everything was supposed to change. You won a scholarship, your thesis impressed every professor, you were chosen to speak at graduation. You sent the invitation home weeks in advance, writing carefully, "I hope you can come. I've been waiting for this day." Their reply was 2 words. "We'll see." You read it over and over, trying to find warmth between the letters. You told your friends, proudly, that your parents were coming. You even reserved 2 seats in the front row, the best view, so you could see their faces when your name was called. The night before, you couldn't sleep. You pictured your mother smiling through tears, your father clapping with pride. That image carried you through 4 years of exhaustion. But the next morning, your phone stayed silent. No messages. No "we're on the way." You told yourself they were running late. The ceremony began. You scanned the rows, parents laughing, families waving balloons, cameras flashing. Your heartbeat quickened as you searched every aisle. But their seats were still empty. When the announcer finally called your name, you walked to the stage, forcing a smile for the photo. Applause echoed, but not from the people you wanted most to hear it from. That night you placed your diploma on the desk. Your phone lay beside it, dark and quiet. You stared at it, waiting for the screen to light up. Just one message: congratulations. Nothing came. Only the ticking of the clock and the sound of your own breathing. You whispered, "Did I do something wrong?" Close quote. Silence answered. The next day you called home. Your mother picked up, calm as ever. "Oh, right, graduation was yesterday. I forgot we were busy." You hesitated, then said softly, "It's okay, Mom." After hanging up, you cried not out of anger, but because you finally understood. It had never been important to them. You began to replay everything: hospital stays they skipped, birthdays they forgot, holidays where your name was barely mentioned, while your brother's achievements filled the conversation. You were always fine. And people who are fine don't get checked on. You remember one rainy afternoon at 14. You brought home a bad test score, trembling with fear. You hoped for comfort, but instead heard, "Look at yourself. You've embarrassed the family." That day you stopped talking about school. You learned to hide pain behind polite smiles, to use silence as a shield. Have you ever felt that way, trying so hard just to earn a little warmth, yet all you get is indifference? At sign if you have, stay with me. Because what comes next will make you realize you are not alone. After graduation you buried yourself in work, pretending business could fill the emptiness. Every morning you brewed coffee, watched the light pour through the window, and told yourself, everything's fine. But deep down, one question never left. Why didn't they come? Close quote. It wasn't about the ceremony, it was about a lifetime of wondering, why wasn't I enough to be loved? Close quote. Time moved on. You learned to accept that silence is also an answer. You didn't blame them anymore, but the sadness lingered quiet and familiar. Then one afternoon your phone rang. Your mother's voice, cheerful as if nothing had happened. "Honey, can you help us with something? We need $5,000, it's urgent." You froze. Not because of the money, but because of how casual she sounded, as if distance had never existed. You asked, "Is everything okay?" Close quote. She replied, "We're fine. Just send it today." You took a deep breath and said slowly, "I can't." Silence. Then your father's voice cut in. "You're selfish. Can't even help your own parents." Your heart pounded. You didn't shout. You didn't explain. You simply understood sometimes you can love someone deeply, but still need to protect yourself from them. Days later, a knock on the door. Police officers. A report had been filed claiming you owed money to your family. You almost laughed. You told them your side of the story and sat down afterward, staring at your small apartment. For the first time, you felt light. Because you no longer had to pretend everything was okay. That night you opened your laptop and looked at your graduation photo. The smile looked forced, but your eyes carried something stronger: resilience. You realized you had survived every silence, every cold remark, every invisible wound. And you were still standing. You no longer needed their validation. All you wanted was peace. If you've ever been hurt by the very people you love most, remember this. The wound doesn't define you, your healing does. You deserve love that doesn't need proof, care that doesn't come with conditions. And if this story touched something inside you, leave a gentle like or subscribe, not for support, but to stay connected through stories that remind us healing is possible. Because sometimes, a single honest story is enough to make someone realize they were never truly alone. Time moved on, and life slowly began to find its rhythm again. You got your first real job after graduation, not perfect, but yours. Every morning, you brewed your coffee, opened the window, and watched sunlight spill through the curtains. Some days felt so peaceful that you almost believed you had forgotten the past. But memories don't disappear. They only sleep, waiting for the sound of a familiar voice to wake them up. It was a Thursday afternoon. You were sorting papers on your desk when your phone rang. The number on the screen made your chest tighten. You hadn't seen it in a long time, but it still knew how to stir something inside you. You picked up. Your mother's voice came through, soft, but strangely distant. "Hey, honey. Mom needs your help with something." Just a few words, yet they froze you in place. Not "How are you doing?" Close quote. Not "We're proud of you." Just, "Help me with something." You took a breath and asked gently, "What do you need, Mom?" Close quote. "I need to borrow $5,000, close quote, she said, almost casually. "It's urgent. The family's in a tight spot. You can help, right?" Close quote. You held the phone tighter. 1,000 thoughts rushed through your mind. That night, you stepped out onto the balcony. The city lights glittered below. Cars rushed by. Life went on. Everyone had somewhere to return to. And you had only the quiet. You asked yourself, was I wrong to say no? But deep down, a quiet voice inside you whispered, no. For once, you chose yourself. You thought of all the other times, the times you were the first to apologize, even when you didn't know what you'd done wrong. The times you rushed home when they needed something. The times you tried to patch things up, even when you were the one bleeding. You were always the fixer. The peacekeeper. The one who carried the weight so no one else had to. But not this time. The next day, you woke early, dressed for work, and tried to pretend everything was fine. But their voices kept replaying in your head, "You've changed. You're selfish." At lunch, your co-workers talked about their families, how their moms called to check on them, how their dads still asked if they were eating enough. You smiled, pretending to listen, while your mind drifted elsewhere. You weren't jealous. You just wished you could speak about your parents the way they did, with warmth instead of defense. That evening, you came home and found an envelope in your mailbox. Not a letter, a notice from the local police department. They were asking you to come in for a financial dispute involving family. You stood frozen, reading it again and again. Your hands trembled slightly. You didn't need to ask who filed the report. You already knew. Shock wasn't what you felt, emptiness was. You wondered, what makes a parent do this to their own child? At the station, you explained everything. The officer listened quietly, then sighed. "This happens more often than you think," close quote, he said gently. "Sometimes people use the law to control the ones they can't control emotionally." You nodded. A faint smile crossed your face, tired but calm. There were no tears this time. No anger. Only clarity. Because in that moment, you realized. They no longer saw you as family. They saw you as a resource. When you returned home, you didn't turn on the lights. You sat in the dark for a long time. Outside, cars passed, shadows moved, and the faint glow of streetlights painted lines across your walls. You remembered that graduation night, how you sat alone then, too. Only this time, you weren't crying. You smiled instead, a quiet, defiant smile. Because finally, you understood. Sometimes losing your family isn't a tragedy, it's a beginning. Days passed. You blocked the calls. You deleted the old messages. You let the silence grow, not as punishment, but as peace. You started taking walks again, reading before bed, cooking for yourself. Every morning, you still made coffee. But now, the aroma didn't remind you of loneliness, it smelled like freedom. One afternoon, you opened your email. A single message waited. "We miss you." 6 words. No apology. No explanation. You read them slowly. Then you closed your eyes. You didn't feel anger. You didn't even feel sad. You felt nothing but calm. Because you knew some apologies arrived too late to matter. You deleted the message, grabbed your coat, and went outside. The air was cool, the sky painted gold by the setting sun. You watched people passing by, couples holding hands, friends laughing. And for the first time, you didn't feel like an outsider. Not because someone had found you, but because you had found yourself. Have you ever reached that point where you no longer need anyone's approval to feel at peace? If you have, tell me in one word below. Maybe your story will help someone else breathe a little easier tonight. One evening, you walked through the park and saw a young woman sitting on a bench, crying softly. Next to her was a damp graduation photo. You stopped, handed her a tissue. She looked up, eyes red, and whispered, "How do you stop a hurt?" Close quote. You paused, choosing your words carefully. One day, close quote, you said, you realize you don't need them there to prove you're enough. You just need to believe it. She nodded slowly. And you smiled before walking away, the breeze brushing your face soft, almost like a farewell from your old life. That night, you left the window open, letting the wind drift in. You looked out at the city lights and realized you'd changed. You were no longer the child begging for love. No longer the one waiting for validation. Now, you were the person who could hold your own pain and still smile. The person who could stand alone, not because no one stayed, but because you finally chose yourself. You took out your old diploma, wiped off the dust. You remembered that day standing on stage, believing it was your loneliest moment. But now, you see it differently. That was the day you were set free. Because you don't need anyone in the audience to shine. If you're still here, listening to this story, maybe you understand something now. Not everyone who shares your blood deserves a seat in your life. Family isn't always where you're loved. Sometimes, it's where you learn how to love yourself. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story touched a quiet part of you, a soft like or subscribe will help us keep telling stories for those who've ever felt forgotten, but chose kindness anyway. Because in the end, the most beautiful thing isn't being loved by others, it's looking in the mirror and whispering, "I don't need permission to be at peace anymore." Left parenthesis, and if you've ever felt the same, share one word in the comments that describes your feeling right now. Someone out there might need to read it. Optional hyphen. Weeks passed in quiet recovery. You thought you were finally finding peace again, work, new faces, a sense of routine. Yet the past has a strange way of showing up right when you start to heal. One morning, while pouring coffee, your phone buzzed with a message from a relative. "Have you seen what your parents posted?" Close quote. You frowned, half curious, half uneasy. When you opened the app, there it was, your name, written out for everyone to see, surrounded by hundreds of comments. Your mother's post read, "After all the years we raised her, she turned her back on us when we needed her most. What a disappointment." Below it, the replies piled up. "Children these days have no heart. Those poor parents, they sacrificed so much." You stared at the screen. Each word felt like a small hammer tapping the same bruise. It wasn't that what they said was true, it was that the people who should have protected you were now the ones holding the torch. You didn't cry. You just sat still, watching the notifications flash. For a moment, you felt like you were standing in a courtroom of gossip, and your own family was the judge. You read each comment carefully, then closed the app. Something inside you cracked, not from fresh pain, but from an old wound that finally reopened. That night, you didn't go online again. You turned off the lights, sat in the dark room with only the moonlight spilling through the window, and thought about everything: the dinners filled with silence, the glances that never lingered on you, the years of trying to be enough. When did love turn into a contest of who could hurt who first? You used to think family was built on care, but now it felt like survival. Have you ever felt that way when your truth is twisted so tightly you barely recognize yourself in other people's stories? If you have, then you understand. Sometimes silence is the only way left to protect what's left of your dignity. The next day, you went to work as usual. You smiled, greeted everyone, laughed at small jokes. Inside, though, every laugh echoed against the hollow part of you that knew what people were whispering. Someone asked softly, "You okay?" Close quote, and you answered the same word you always did: "I'm fine." Those two words became your armor. You wore them every day, polished and unbreakable. But strangely, the longer you hid behind them, the more you started to see yourself clearly. One afternoon after work, you overheard two co-workers murmuring, "Did you read that post? Poor parents. She must have done something awful." You walked past without a word, but your pulse quickened. Being humiliated publicly isn't just painful, it's the quiet despair of realizing no one cares about the truth. That night, you sat down and decided to speak, not to fight back, but to reclaim your voice. You typed slowly. Some stories don't need to be told in full, because the people who live them already know the truth. Thank you to those who care. Sometimes silence isn't weakness, it's the only path to peace. You hit post, turned off your phone, and exhaled. You didn't expect anything. You didn't need sympathy or sides. Because when people want to believe the wrong version of you, even your truth sounds like noise. The next morning, you opened the app again. Your post had been shared hundreds of times. But what surprised you weren't the numbers, it was the strangers writing beneath it. "I've been there. You're not alone. Thank you for saying what I couldn't." You read each one slowly, and for the first time in years, warmth spread through you. Not because people defended you, but because someone finally saw you. From that moment, you realized you no longer feared being misunderstood. You no longer needed anyone to prove your worth. All you had to do was keep living with honesty. Life went back to steady rhythm, but you were no longer the same. You spoke less, listened more, and carried a calm strength that came from surviving what once broke you. Each morning, you looked into the mirror and whispered, "It's okay." You made it through. You began to enjoy small things again: reading before bed, listening to soft music, tending to the little plant on your windowsill. Watching it push through dry soil to reach the light made you think, people can be like that too, cracked open, but still capable of growing. One afternoon, you met an old college friend. They looked at you for a long moment and said, "You've changed. You seem lighter, but stronger." You smiled. "Because I've learned that some things don't need to be proven. Living well is enough." You looked up at the sky. It wasn't a new sky. You were just seeing it differently. You weren't searching for approval anymore, you were searching for peace. Have you ever realized that sometimes the collapse of trust is the beginning of freedom? If you understand that, stay a little longer, because what comes next might show you how even from ruins, something beautiful can grow. You kept walking forward, never looking back. Behind you were the whispers, the hurt, the tears. Ahead was light, the kind of light that doesn't depend on anyone else's permission to shine. And if you're still listening now, maybe you too have been humiliated, misunderstood, or hurt by those who were supposed to love you. Remember this. Choosing silence doesn't make you weak. It means you've weathered enough storms to know you don't need to scream to be heard anymore. Thank you for staying with me until this moment. If you saw a piece of yourself in this story, a quiet like or subscribe helps us keep telling stories for those who have been broken, but still choose to be kind, who still choose to love. Because after all, not everyone gets to be the child their family is proud of, but some of us learn to be proud of ourselves instead. And you, right now, are one of them. There are mornings when you don't wake because of the alarm, but because of a quiet echo inside you, an old sadness that never really slept. Sunlight slips through the curtains and lands on the framed diploma you still haven't hung. You look at it for a long time and realize you've come so far without ever stopping to breathe. Yet freedom isn't easy. It comes wrapped in loneliness, like two sides of the same coin. Some nights, you stare at the ceiling and ask, "If I forgive him, does that mean I'm weak?" Close quote. Or, "If I don't, will I always be trapped by the past?" Close quote. The questions circle like a song with no end. You know you need to let go, you just don't know how. Because forgiveness, you realize, isn't about them anymore. It's about you. One afternoon, you walk through the park you used to visit during college. On the same worn bench sits an older woman, silver hair glowing in the sunlight, her eyes kind yet heavy. When you sit beside her, she smiles. You know, close quote, she says softly, sometimes parents lose their children not because they stop loving them, but because they never learned how to love them right. Her words land quietly, but they stay. You don't ask who she is or what story she carries. You just know the universe sent her for a reason. Back home, you open the window and let the evening breeze move the curtains. For the first time, you think about your parents without anger, just a gentle sadness. You understand now. They, too, were wounded people trying to love the only way they knew how, even when that way hurt you. And you see that forgiveness isn't about setting them free, it's about setting yourself free. That night, you write a letter you never planned to send. Mom, Dad, I don't blame you anymore. I understand that love isn't always enough to keep people close. But thank you. Because of all the hurt, I learned how to love myself. I don't need your approval, just peace for us all. When you finish, you fold the letter and slip it into a drawer. A tear falls, but it tastes of release, not pain. From that day on, life feels lighter. You smile sincerely when someone compliments you, without wondering if you deserve it. You say no when you're tired. You rest without guilt. You start finding joy in small, quiet things: brewing tea, listening to rain, watching the sunset. You realize happiness isn't loud. It's the moment you can breathe without feeling like you owe anyone an apology. Then one afternoon, your phone rings. It's your father's number. You stare at it for a long time before answering. His voice is rough, slower than you remember. I don't know what to say, close quote, he murmurs, but I miss you. You pause, then whisper, I miss you too. No blame. No anger. Just two people who have both been broken, finding their way back through a simple sentence. The call doesn't last long, but something inside you opens our door, maybe. Not to the past, but beyond it. Some wounds never disappear. They just stop hurting once you stop touching them. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, it means choosing not to let the past define who you are now. And little by little, you're learning to do exactly that. Another evening, you visit your old campus. The benches are still there, the bougainvillea is still blooming. You sit under the fading light, hearing laughter from students nearby. For a moment, you see your younger self again, the girl who believed that effort alone could earn love. You wish you could reach across time and tell her, you've done enough. Now it's okay to live for yourself. On your way home, you stop by a small store and buy a simple wooden frame. That night, you finally place your diploma inside and hang it on the wall, not to show off, but to remind yourself. Even if no one showed up that day, you still did something extraordinary. You stand there, looking at it, smiling quietly. You've walked through your darkest days and come out with a softer kind of strength, the kind that doesn't need to prove itself. Maybe this, you think, is the freedom you've been searching for all along. If you're still here, listening, maybe you've felt this too, the ache of being misunderstood, of having to be strong when all you wanted was to rest. Believe this. Pain can become something precious once you learn to look at it with gentleness. Not everyone who hurt you deserves hatred, sometimes they simply didn't know how to love better. And by choosing not to become like them, you've already won. You look out the window. Night has fallen. The streetlights paint soft gold across your face. Your reflection in the glass looks calm. You whisper, I'm okay. Truly okay. And if you're hearing this, I want you to know you are not alone. No matter where you are or what someone has done to you, you still deserve a softer life, a kinder love, a peace that belongs only to you. If this story stirred something in you, leave just a small sign, a quiet like or subscribe, not for me, but for yourself. Let it be your way of saying, I'm still here. I'm still moving forward. I still choose love. Because sometimes, you don't need applause. You don't need anyone's validation. You just need to look back, see how far you've come, and smile at the person who survived it all. Have you ever forgiven someone not because they deserved it, but because you wanted to be free? If so, write one word below that captures how it felt. Someone out there might need to read that word today. And if anyone ever asks you, how did you become so strong? Close quote, you can smile and say, because once, I was weak but I learned how to stand without anyone's hand to hold. This story isn't just mine, it's yours too. It belongs to everyone who's ever been hurt but kept going. And if you're standing at a crossroads right now, remember this. The light has always been there, you just needed the courage to open your eyes again. Left parenthesis, thank you for walking through this part of the journey with me. If your heart feels a little lighter now, stay close, because what comes next will show how even the hardest pain can turn into something beautiful. Optional - time moved gently, like a stream flowing through autumn leaves. You stopped counting the days since everything ended. Each morning, you quietly brewed a cup of tea, watched the steam rise, and felt warmth returning to your hands. Life wasn't filled with big changes anymore, but the stillness itself became a gift, one you had never truly noticed before. You began to see beauty in small, ordinary things. The sound of birds outside, sunlight falling through the window, the soft smiles of strangers passing by. The world hadn't changed, only the way you looked at it. Some afternoons, you sit in your favorite cafe, writing in the same old journal. It used to be full of questions. Why didn't they love me? Why wasn't I enough? Why did everything I tried fall apart? But now, you no longer wrote with pain. You wrote with gratitude. Thank you for teaching me loneliness so I could learn to be my own friend. Thank you for the hurt, because through it, I discovered the value of gentleness. Each word you wrote felt like a small wind sweeping away the dust that once covered your heart. One evening, while walking home, you passed an old photo shop. In the window was a picture of a family, a father, a mother, and a child, all smiling beneath the sunlight. You stopped and stared. Not because you envied them, but because the photo reminded you of an old dream. A simple wish to belong somewhere, to be loved without asking for it. You smiled softly. You realized that dream still lived within you, but its meaning had changed. You no longer thought of family as something you were missing, but as something you could build. Sometimes, family is just one person, and that person is you. You kept your habit of walking each afternoon, down tree-lined streets where golden leaves fell like quiet rain. Sometimes you saw a mother holding her child's hand, or a father kneeling to tie a shoelace. Those moments used to hurt, but now they filled you with quiet understanding. Not everyone knows how to love right away. Some spend a lifetime learning. And people like you who have been hurt often become the ones who love with the most care. At night, you sit by the window and write letters to yourself. You've come a long way, haven't you? You cried over little things, but you also survived what you thought would break you. Don't be afraid anymore. You're strong enough now to hold yourself. When you finished, you smiled a real smile, gentle and free. One morning on your way to work, you met an old college friend, someone who had seen you back when you hid tears behind laughter. They looked at you, surprised, and said, "You've changed. You look peaceful, lighter somehow." You smiled and replied, "Maybe because I stopped trying to please everyone." That simple line carried the weight of years. From then on, you allowed yourself to live slower. No more racing to prove your worth, no more chasing approval. You learned to pause in the middle of your day, close your eyes, and breathe just to feel that you were still here. Still alive. Still whole. Sometimes late at night, you opened your graduation photo, the one you once couldn't bear to look at. Now, when you saw it, you didn't feel pain anymore. You saw a young person standing alone, smiling despite everything. You whispered to that version of yourself, "Thank you for not giving up." And your eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but of pride, forgiveness, and gratitude. One afternoon, you decided to visit your old home. The door looked the same, the wooden fence still covered in moss. You stood there for a long moment before knocking. Your mother opened the door. Her face hadn't changed much, though her eyes seemed softer somehow. You both stood silently for a while. Then she spoke first. "How have you been?" Close quote. It was such a simple question, yet it caught in your throat. You smiled. "I'm doing okay." No one mentioned the past, no one explained the silence. But deep down, you knew. Sometimes silence is the apology words can't deliver. Dinner that night was quiet but kind. A few small jokes, a few shy smiles. You realized that not every relationship can return to what it was, but some can begin again, differently. Slowly. Gently. As you left, your mother followed you to the door and said softly, "Take care of yourself." 4 small words, but they warmed a part of you that had been cold for years. On the drive back, you rolled the window down and let the wind touch your face. The sun was setting, painting the road in gold. You thought to yourself, maybe forgiveness is when you no longer need to win. Since that day, you've lived even more gently. You understand now that everyone carries a story you can't see. And so, you choose kindness not because the world has been kind to you, but because you refuse to add more pain to it. You are no longer afraid of being misunderstood or left behind. The people meant for you will always find their way back, no matter the noise of the world. One evening, while walking around the lake, you heard a child laugh, bright and pure. That sound made you think of your younger self, the child who once believed that loving deeply was enough to be loved in return. You smiled and whispered, "Thank you for believing that." You've come to understand that maturity isn't about becoming harder, it's about learning to stay soft in a world that can be harsh. You don't need perfection anymore. Peace is enough. You've learned to love without fear, to give without expectation, to walk away without bitterness. One day, you wrote the final lines of that old journal. "The road has been long, but I've walked through the pain. Now, I only want to live the gentle part." When you closed the book, it felt like closing an entire chapter of your life. But instead of sadness, you felt light, as if you had been reborn, not to forget, but to begin again with a cleaner heart. Have you ever wondered what really changes a person, time or pain? Maybe both. Time heals, pain teaches. And you, the one who once thought you were broken, have begun to bloom from the very cracks that once hurt you. You sit quietly, watching the evening sky turn violet. The clouds drift slowly, tenderly, just like your heart now. Maybe everything you've lived through was meant to bring you here, to this calm, to this moment, to yourself. That night, as you turn off the lights, you can hear your heartbeat clearly, steady and calm. No more restless nights. No more dreams filled with tears. Just peace, quiet, simple, complete. You know your journey isn't over. But now, no matter how far the road stretches, you're not afraid anymore. Because you learned the most important truth of all, that sometimes it's the wounds themselves that teach you how to become the gentle soul you were always meant to be. Have you ever felt that too, when after all the loss, you realize you've become softer, not weaker? If you have, hold on to that feeling. It's life's most precious gift, the peace of a heart that still knows how to love after the storm. Time flows like a quiet river between two silent shores. You no longer count the months or wait for calls that never come. Each day begins the same: a cup of tea, a sliver of light on the wall, a deep breath. Yet within that repetition, something has changed. The emptiness has faded, replaced by a quiet fullness, the feeling of being enough. Enough with yourself, enough with the present moment. You realize you no longer need to be strong to prove anything. You are strong simply because you have walked through pain and stayed gentle. There are mornings when you look in the mirror and smile softly. The image of a strict father, the echo of a mother's harsh words, they no longer haunt you. There's only your face now, calm, complete, free. You start giving time to the things you once neglected. A short trip to the countryside, where the fields stretch endlessly and the wind hums low through the grass. You sit by the river, feet dangling in the cold water, listening to the rustle of fallen leaves. You don't need company. You don't need to post a picture. You just sit there and for the first time, realize that life can still feel warm even when you're alone. One afternoon, you stop by the old library downtown, the one that sheltered you during the loneliest years. The air still smells of paper and dust and memory. You pull a random book from the shelf and open to a note scribbled on the inside cover. Peace doesn't come from forgetting. It comes from accepting. You read it again and again. Maybe someone who once felt lost left those words behind for the next wanderer. Today, that wanderer is you. As you step outside, sunlight pours over the stone steps, golden and forgiving. You close your eyes, breathe deeply, and realize you are no longer the hurt child, the abandoned one. You're simply a person, alive, growing, choosing peace. At night, you sit on the porch, listening to crickets sing with the wind. Everything feels so simple, and yet every sound carries weight. You used to fear silence because it made you face yourself. Now, you find comfort in it, a language spoken without words. One evening, a letter arrives. The handwriting is shaky, the paper thin. It's from your mother. "I don't know where to start," close quote, she writes. "I've been thinking a lot. Maybe I made mistakes. I just want you to be happy. Even if we're apart, I watch over you every day." You read it slowly, your hands trembling slightly. You don't cry, not because it doesn't move you, but because something inside you finally settles. You realize that forgiveness isn't about who was right or wrong. It's about someone finally lowering their guard to speak with honesty. That night, you don't reply. You simply open the window and let the wind carry the years away. You don't need more words, because sometimes understanding doesn't come from what's said, but from the silence that follows. After that night, you feel lighter. Thoughts of your parents no longer sting. You think of them with quiet compassion. You see now they, too, were once children who never learned how to love gently. And they carried those wounds into the way they loved you. Everyone, at some point, gets lost inside their own version of love. Gets lost inside their own version of love. Gets lost inside their own version of love. Gets lost in. One morning, while walking to work, you see an elderly couple crossing the street hand in hand. Their steps are slow, their eyes soft. There's no fire left in their gaze, only calm, the kind that comes from surviving the storms together. You stop for a moment, watching them disappear into the crowd, and you think, maybe real love isn't loud or flawless. Maybe it's the quiet choice to stay, again and again, even after the hurt. You realize you're learning to love that way too, quietly, patiently, without demand. Not someone else, but life itself. Yourself. Even the scars you once tried to hide. Time moves on, and good things begin to find you again. A message from an old friend, a new job offer, a day of clear blue sky. Small things, but they feel like gifts. As if the universe is whispering, you've been brave long enough. Now it's time to receive. At night, you put on soft piano music. The notes fall like raindrops on the warm air. You close your eyes, letting the melody cradle you. Each sound brushes against old memories, but this time, they don't hurt. They simply remind you of the journey, the dark days, the sleepless nights, the quiet mornings when you kept going. All of it now feels like one gentle song called growth. Have you ever realized that what you truly seek isn't happiness, but peace of mind? Not grand joy, but the simple freedom to feel without fear, without shame. Once you learn that, you understand. Happiness never left. It was just waiting for you to slow down enough to notice. One morning, as you step onto your balcony, a small bird lands on the railing. It sings softly, as if greeting the day. You stand still, listening, and smile. A few years ago, you would have missed this moment completely. But now, you see its quiet miracle, a tiny creature still singing in a noisy world. You realize that's you, gentle, alive, still singing after everything. That afternoon, you write in your journal again. I no longer need anyone to understand me. I just need to understand myself. As you set the pen down, your heart feels lighter, like a kite rising into the summer sky. You start to say thank you to life, to those who left, to those who stayed. Thank you to the people who hurt you, because they taught you how to value kindness. Thank you to the ones who stayed, for showing you what patience looks like. And thank you to yourself, for not giving up when the world gave you every reason to. Late one night, you stand on your balcony, looking up at the stars. Everything is quiet, so quiet you can hear your own heartbeat. You realize peace isn't the absence of storms, but the ability to stand in the rain and no longer be afraid. And then, an unnamed emotion fills your chest, part gratitude, part serenity, part awe. You whisper to yourself, thank you for staying with me through it all. Have you ever felt that the moment you pause in the rush of life, take a deep breath, and realize you are no longer broken? That you didn't escape pain by forgetting, but by learning to love deeper? If you have, then you already know salvation doesn't come from others. It comes the moment you choose to stay close to your own heart. There are mornings when you wake and realize the world feels quieter. Not because it has grown less noisy, but because the echoes inside you have finally faded. The memories that once pulled you apart now lie like soft mirrors, reflecting the past without cutting into your heart. You begin to understand that freedom doesn't come from leaving everything behind, it comes from no longer being bound by it. No more resentment. No more explaining yourself. No more hunger to be understood. There is only you, your breath, your pulse, and the quiet rhythm of being alive. Each morning, sunlight spills through your window like a gentle greeting. The room is still simple, the same mug rests in its old place, but everything now carries its own quiet soul. The kettle hums, the scent of tea rises like memory, and the light paints slow golden shapes on the wall, as if time itself is smiling softly at you. You sit down, take a sip, and let your shoulders loosen. You don't think. You don't need to. You just sit knowing that this, right here, is life. Not life to chase, not life to fix, but life to feel. One afternoon, you walk around the lake. The wind glides across the surface, leaving small ripples that rise and disappear. You watch them closely, realizing they are pieces of you, moments of chaos that once stirred your heart, now dissolving without resistance. A little girl rides past on her bicycle, her laughter clear and bright in the sun. You smile. It's been so long since someone's laughter has touched you like that. Not because you envy her joy, but because you remember. That laughter used to be yours. Freedom, you think, is when you can finally smile at the child you once were. You remember how hard you once tried to please everyone. How you measured your worth by the nods and glances of others, by grades and gestures and words of approval. Now, you know better. You know you are doing well even when no one is watching. You no longer crave applause or recognition. Because true worth doesn't come from validation. It comes from the peace you feel when you look back and know you've done your best. One evening, you sit on your porch as the wind runs through your hair. The streetlight glows gold on your hands, hands that once trembled in arguments, once wiped away silent tears. Now, they rest calmly on your knees. Still, whole. You remember a line from a book you once read. When the heart stops craving, the soul begins to rest. And for the first time, it makes sense. You no longer want to change anyone. You no longer want to prove a point. You only want to live gently, light enough not to hurt others, and deep enough never to lose yourself. Then one day, a call comes. Your father has been hospitalized. Nothing serious, they say, just age, just exhaustion. Still, something inside you tightens. You think for a long time before deciding to go. The hospital is pale and still, the scent of antiseptic mixed with quiet. He lies there, thinner than before, hair grayer. When you walk in, his eyes meet yours, not sharp, not cold. Just searching. Hey, you came close, quote, he says, his voice rough but soft. Yes. I came close, quote, you answer. Neither of you say more. You sit beside him and hold his hand, that same hand that once held discipline like a weapon. Now it trembles, fragile, human. In that moment, the memories fade. The anger, the distance, the years of silence all melt away. You don't see a man who hurt you. You see a man who once didn't know how to love better. You squeeze his hand gently. Not to say I forgive you, close quote, but simply, I understand. And sometimes, understanding is the purest form of love. When you leave the hospital, the sunset bleeds orange across the city. It's bright, but not harsh. The clouds drift slowly, as if the sky itself is exhaling with you. You realize that peace isn't found in perfection, it's found in seeing beauty even in what's incomplete. That night, you open your notebook and write. No one escapes pain. But if you learn to hold it softly, pain becomes a seed. You close the book and light a small candle on your desk. The flame flickers, weak but steady. It reminds you of yourself. Not brilliant, not loud, but quietly alive. On rainy nights, you sit by the window listening to the gentle rhythm of drops against the glass. You close your eyes and don't rush to sleep. In the sound of the rain, you hear your own breathing, slow, even, real. There's no more running, no more resistance. Only acceptance. Have you ever felt that a night when no tears fall, yet your heart feels lighter than it ever has? One morning, you face the mirror and try saying something you never could before. I'm okay. It sounds strange at first, but as you repeat it, your voice softens, steady, believable. You realize that freedom doesn't come from being rescued. It comes from believing you deserve peace. You start rearranging your space. Old things you no longer need are given away. Photos are packed into boxes not to erase the past, but to honor it for what it taught you. As your room grows cleaner, so do you. The clutter fades, and what remains is order outside and within. In the afternoon, you visit the park and sit beside a stranger. Neither of you speaks. You simply watch the sun go down together. You realize words aren't always necessary to share something deep. Sometimes, silence connects two souls more than conversation ever could. When the sun finally disappears, you exhale, feeling something heavy loosen inside you. No promises, no expectations, just the quiet truth that today, you lived honestly. On your way home, the wind blows through your hair. Everything feels strangely clear. You think, maybe freedom isn't about going far. Maybe it's about coming home to yourself, without fear. That night, you look out the window and see the moon hanging high, silver and calm. You smile, not because something happened, but because, for once, you don't need anything else. Peace, it turns out, doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes, it comes softly, like moonlight over your own roof. You write one last line in your journal. Freedom isn't the right to go anywhere. It's the grace to stay with yourself, with the present, with the ordinary things. You close the book, turn off the light, and lie down. Outside, the wind still moves. And deep inside, you know you're no longer searching for peace. Peace has been here all along. You just had to remember how to see it. Have you ever realized that everything you've been chasing outside was only waiting for you to come back within? It had been years since you last walked through that gate. The old house still stood quietly on the familiar street, shaded by the same row of trees whispering softly in the wind. Everything seemed unchanged, everything except you. Your steps were slower now, but your heart lighter. No bitterness. No anger. Just a strange, gentle calm that came from having survived. The afternoon sun bathed the street in gold. You stopped before the wooden door, your hand brushing against its faded surface. The wood felt cool and rough beneath your fingers, familiar, like the texture of memory. You stood still for a long time, listening to the rustle of leaves, the distant crow of a rooster, and the quiet thump of your own heartbeat, not racing, just steady. You took a deep breath, then knocked. The sound was small, but it echoed far inside you, a call that reached both past and present. The door opened. It was your mother. She looked smaller than you remembered. Her hair was grayer, her face lined, but her eyes were still the same. Only now they carried something else, hesitation, maybe even fear. "You," close quote, she whispered, her voice trembling as if testing whether this moment was real. "Yes. It's me," close quote, you said softly. For a moment, neither of you moved. Time hung still between you. The scent of jasmine drifted in from the garden, wrapping around the air like an old lullaby. Finally, she turned slightly and opened the door wider. "Come in." You stepped inside. Nothing had really changed, the wooden cabinet leaning slightly to the side, the faded painting still crooked on the wall, the same tea set with a tiny crack on its rim, the one you broke years ago. Everything felt frozen in time, like the house had been quietly waiting for this moment. Your mother poured tea, her hands trembling. "I don't know if you still drink this," close quote, she said softly. "It's the kind you liked." You smiled faintly. "I still do." You both sat at the small table, the same one from years before. For a long time, no one spoke. Only the wind outside, the faint clink of porcelain, and the scent of tea filling the space between you. At first, the silence was awkward, but slowly, it became peaceful. You realized you didn't need to hear an apology anymore. Sometimes silence is an apology. Your mother looked at you, eyes glistening, full of things she wanted to say but couldn't. Finally, she murmured, "Are you doing okay?" Close quote, "I'm okay," close quote, you replied, your voice steady. Those two words carried the weight of everything you'd been through, the sleepless nights, the quiet tears, the mornings you promised yourself you'd keep going. But now, they were no longer a shield. They were the truth. Your mother smiled, tired but gentle. "That's good," close quote, she said quietly. She stood up and reached into a drawer, pulling out a small wooden box. She placed it in front of you. "I kept this from the day you left." You opened it. Inside was a photograph, you, in your graduation gown. The picture you thought no one had taken. The edges were yellowed, but your younger face still glowed with light, the light of someone who didn't yet know how much growing would cost. You looked up. She was watching you. And for the first time, her gaze wasn't filled with disappointment or pride, but something simple tenderness. "I thought you'd thrown everything of mine away," you whispered. She shook her head, smiling faintly. "I was angry. But I never forgot." The words were as soft as a sigh, yet they reached deep. You nodded, unable to speak. Because forgiveness doesn't always arrive with tears, sometimes it sits quietly, in a smile shared over a cup of tea. The sun dipped lower, spilling its last light across the table. It touched her hair, your hands, the photograph turning everything gold. Your mother rose and walked out to the garden. You followed. The jasmine bush still bloomed white, fragrant and pure. She tapped the petals that had fallen to the ground and said quietly, "I used to put those flowers on your desk every morning, remember?" You smiled. "I remember. That scent always made me feel safe." Both of you stood there for a while, watching the petals fall. Her voice, a tear fell, hers, yours, maybe both. But it wasn't the kind that burned. It was the kind that cleanses. When the sun finally set, you gathered your things to leave. Your mother walked you to the gate. She hesitated, placing her hand on your shoulder, then pulled back as if the gesture might break something delicate. "Take care of yourself," she said softly. "I will," you replied. You turned once before stepping away. She was still standing there, her silhouette framed by the fading light, small, fragile, yet somehow infinite. On the way home, you didn't cry. You didn't replay the conversation in your head. You just felt light. As if all the unspoken words had already found their way into understanding. That night, you opened your window. The moon hung high, calm and full. The wind carried the faint scent of jasmine, the same as before, the same as always. You breathed it in, feeling a quiet warmth spread through you. Your mother wasn't someone you feared now. She wasn't even someone you needed to forgive anymore. She was simply someone you could remember and smile. You took out your journal and wrote, "Today, I went home. Not to relive the past, but to thank it for teaching me how to love without fear." You put down your pen and looked out the window. The moonlight lay across the floor like a soft promise. And somewhere inside you, another moon rose bright, whole, no longer afraid of the night. Have you ever had that moment when you meet the person who once broke you and realize you don't hate them anymore? Only gratitude remains, a quiet thank you whispered to the past. "Thank you for being part of the journey that made me who I am today." After that quiet afternoon, something inside you began to shift. The reunion hadn't been dramatic, no tears, no grand apologies, yet somehow, every fracture within you had begun to close. You didn't walk away from the past by forgetting it, but by smiling at it as one might smile at an old traveler who once shared the same road. Life, slowly, began to move again. Not in great leaps, but in quiet ripples. The change was gentle, like spring sunlight spilling into forgotten corners. Nothing extraordinary happened, yet everything felt new. A morning that seemed brighter than usual. Tea that tasted softer. A smile you gave to a stranger without needing a reason. You began to see what had always been there, life itself waiting patiently while you were too busy staring at your wounds. Now you woke earlier. Morning light streamed through the curtains, tender and gold. You poured your coffee, opened the window, and let the breeze brush against your skin. The world stirred awake, the chirping of birds, the damp scent of earth, the rhythm of a city breathing again. You closed your eyes, took a slow breath, and felt your heartbeat steady, quiet, alive. One day, you wandered through the local market. Voices overlapped, laughter, the calls of vendors, the echo of life itself. You bought a small bouquet of yellow daisies for no reason at all, except that you wanted to bring color home. When you placed them in a vase, you realized, perhaps joy doesn't need a reason. It's simply the gratitude of a heart that still knows how to stay. You began walking more. The streets that once felt like a burden now felt like belonging. Each step matched your breath, each breeze felt like a soft hello. You no longer ran from loneliness. Instead, you befriended it like an old companion who had always known you better than anyone. One afternoon, you stopped at the little cafe on the corner. The barista smiled and asked, "Black coffee, like before?" You paused, then smiled back. "Not today. Add a little sugar." A small change, perhaps, but within that sweetness lay a quiet tenderness you'd finally learned to give yourself. The slower you lived, the more you began to see the extraordinary hidden within the ordinary. A stranger's nod. The sound of rain after days of heat. The smell of freshly baked bread. Children's laughter echoing behind the school gates. Every detail, once invisible, now glowed with quiet wonder. You reconnected with old friends, the ones who had seen you fall and rise again. "You're different," one of them said. "Not on the outside, in your eyes. They look lighter." You smiled. "Maybe because I stopped carrying so much." Another friend asked, "Do you ever regret what happened? Everything you went through?" You thought for a moment, then shook your head. "No. Because without it, I wouldn't know how precious peace can be." At night, you didn't fear the dark anymore. You lit a small lamp, played a soft song, and let your thoughts wander gently. The inner noise that once screamed had quieted. There were no arguments left to replay, no words to rewrite. Just the sound of your breathing, calm and steady, and the soft hum of a night that asked for nothing. One evening, you stood on your balcony, watching the city glow below thousands of tiny windows, each holding a story, each carrying someone's private ache. And you thought, maybe all of us are the same, hurt in our own ways, healing in silence, pretending we're fine while learning to love again. No one passes through life unscarred. But maybe the point isn't to avoid pain, maybe it's to learn how to keep loving in spite of it. One quiet Sunday morning, you walked through the park. Children ran, elders stretched beneath the trees, and a girl read beneath a patch of sunlight. You sat on a bench, simply observing, and before you knew it you smiled. Not for a reason, not for anyone. Just because you were alive and at peace. A puppy bounded toward you, tail wagging, pressing its nose against your leg. Its owner rushed over to apologize, but you waved it off, laughing softly. That tiny creature, with its clumsy joy, made something bloom inside your chest. You bent down and stroked its fur and realized that sometimes love finds you in the simplest forms. When you returned home, sunlight filled the room. You stood still, watching dust dance in the light, and remembered a line someone once said. Life owes us nothing. But if we open our hearts, it gives us everything. You smiled and nodded to yourself. Maybe it was true. You began writing again. Not the kind of writing soaked in pain, but little notes. The sky was beautiful today. My coffee tasted good. The flower vendor gave me an extra rose. Tiny fragments, yet together they formed a quiet hymn of gratitude. One night, you walked by the lake. The moon shimmered on the water like 1,000 memories. You thought about all those nights when you thought you wouldn't make it, all the times you wanted to disappear. And yet, here you were, still standing, still breathing, still learning to live. You looked down at your reflection. The person staring back wasn't the same one who once begged the world to notice them. That reflection carried calm, the kind born from surviving storms. You whispered, maybe learning to love life is just learning to love myself again. A breeze passed, carrying the scent of wet grass, soft, earthy, grounding. You closed your eyes and inhaled. And for the first time in a long time, you didn't wish for anything more. You were simply content. Because loving life doesn't mean it's perfect. It means opening your heart again, even when you know it might break. It means believing that behind every scar, there's still space for a smile. You looked up at the sky. The moon glowed gently. The air was cool. The night hummed with quiet life. And in that silence, you could hear the most beautiful sound of all, your own peace. Have you ever felt that too, when one day, you don't need a reason to smile anymore, except the simple truth that you're still here, and that's enough? The night is quiet tonight. The wind is gentle. You sit by the window, watching the city lights shimmer in the distance. Each one flickers softly, fragile, trembling like tiny souls refusing to surrender to the dark. You smile faintly, exhaling. I've come a long way, haven't I? Close quote. You whisper to no one. Since that day, life has flowed on, not like a raging river, but like a calm current winding through the valley. There are still nights when you wake up to the sound of rain, heart aching for reasons you can't quite name. Not sadness, not longing, just a quiet reminder that even peace carries its own echoes. You don't chase those feelings away anymore. You let them sit beside you, quietly, like an old friend who has finally learned how to listen. Because now, you understand pain was never your enemy. It was your teacher. The proof that you were alive enough to feel. Morning comes late. Sunlight slips through the curtains, spilling across the wooden floor. You watch the dust dance in the light, tiny and weightless, and you realize something simple: light never leaves. We just need stillness to see it. You brew tea and sit quietly, watching the steam curl and vanish. You think about people, about time, about how everything you once thought was forever has faded like vapor. Yet somehow, its impermanence makes it more beautiful. Maybe that's what life really is, not about lasting forever, but about pausing long enough to feel what is fleeting. In the afternoon, you walk down the same old street. Children laugh as they run, an old vendor hums softly behind his cart, a couple walks by hand in hand. You stand still for a while, surrounded by ordinary life, and it warms you. The world, you realize, was never cruel. It was you who had closed your heart for too long. At the corner, there's an old bookstore you once loved. You step inside. The air smells like time, paper, dust, and memory. On the shelf sits a thin, faded book. On its cover, one line written in small letters. Everyone walks through darkness to learn how to see the light. You trace your finger across the words and smile. Someone once left this behind, perhaps when they were finding the way too. Just like you. That night, rain falls again. You open the window and listen. It no longer sounds lonely. Just gentle. You turn on your desk lamp. Its light is soft and golden, barely reaching beyond your notebook, but enough. You write. None of us ever truly leave the dark. We just learn to carry a small lamp enough to see the road ahead. When you finish, something catches in your throat. You don't wipe the tear that falls, it doesn't hurt. It's the kind of tear that cleans, not wounds. Because now you know, without the night, you would never have understood the worth of light. Sometimes, you still think of your parents. Not with anger. Not even sadness. Just a kind of gentle distance. You know they've aged, that they, too, carry their regrets. And that thought brings you tenderness instead of blame. You used to think forgiveness was something you gave to others. But now you see forgiveness is the gift you give yourself. When you let go, it doesn't mean what happened was right. It just means you're no longer chained to it. One day, a letter arrives. Just one short line from your mother. I read your writing. I understand now. Thank you for coming back. You read it over and over, not because of the words, but because of what they mean. Understanding, even if late, is still a miracle. That evening, you walk by the lake. The water is still, reflecting the rows of streetlights like a sky turned upside down. A soft wind ripples the surface, scattering those lights into 1,000 fragments, stars floating on water. You sit down on a bench and breathe slowly. You realize something. The light in the dark isn't just from the lamps. It's also from the heart that dares to look. You remember everything: the sleepless nights, the mornings when even breathing felt heavy, the silence that once filled every room. But now, those memories no longer hurt. They've become part of your story, the shadow that gave depth to your light. You don't try to erase them. You simply whisper to your reflection in the glass, "Thank you for surviving." Because healing isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about learning to smile at what once broke you. Later that night, you stand on your balcony again. The city stretches beneath you, a sea of lights. Each one tells a story, some still unfolding, some long-ended, but all of them shining in their own fragile way. You finally understand. What makes people beautiful isn't that they've never been hurt, but that they still glow despite it. You turn back inside. Your little lamp still burns, faint, trembling, but warm. Its light falls across the open notebook, over the last line you wrote. Happiness isn't the absence of darkness, but the courage to carry your own lamp through it. You put the pen down. There's nothing more to say. You've already spoken, not with words, but with the quiet persistence of your living, with every step, every forgiveness, every breath. Outside, the rain has stopped. The air smells like earth, clean, new. The night sky opens wide above you, deep and full of stars. You look up, smiling. Not because everything is perfect, but because you've finally learned how to live with imperfection, how to make peace with the shadows. Perhaps this is what redemption truly means. It doesn't come from someone saving you. It comes from you, the one who walked through the dark and kept the light alive. You close your notebook, turn off the lamp, and the room falls into gentle dimness. But the light doesn't disappear. It lingers in your chest, in your breath, in the stillness that follows. A small lamp in the darkness. And you know now, as long as it burns, there will always be a path ahead, however uncertain, however quiet. Have you ever felt that moment when you realize you don't need anyone to rescue you, because by walking through the night, you've